So, welcome back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to make a homemade pasta. Now, the egg pasta is what I'm going to focus on making, and if you can recall whenever I was talking about the meat sauce, the bolognese, how that came from Bologna, which is in the region of Emilia-Romagna in Italy. The egg pasta is also native to the northern portions of Italy in Emilia-Romagna, where your dried shaped pasta is made with a semolina flour, and that's really more indicative to southern portions of Italy. And I'll kind of give a brief explanation as to why. So in the northern part of Italy, historically, they were more affluent, they were a more richer region than the southern portions of Italy, and they could afford things like eggs. In general, they used a wheat flour that was ground very, very fine, and as you can see here on the bag, this is tipo 00, or 00. As Italians would call it doppio zero flour. And it really doesn't have anything to do really with the quality of the flour as much as it has to do with the grind of the flour. So doppio zero, or 00 flour, is a much more finer grind. Cake flour is a finer grind than the 00, all-purpose being a little bit more of a coarser grind than your 00, so this really falls in between the two. Now, you totally can use all-purpose flour when making your homemade pasta, totally acceptable, totally fine, but for the purposes of this video and doing it my way, I'm going to use the traditional doppio zero flour. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to combine my doppio zero flour with semolina flour. I do feel like the semolina adds a bit more better texture than just using the doppio zero flour alone, although traditionally you can use just the plain doppio zero and the eggs whenever you make your pasta, but in this case, like I said, I'm going to add both. Now, if we were making a harder pasta, as you would in southern Italy, you wouldn't use eggs at all. You would actually use just straight semolina flour with water. Water being a bit more readily available and a lot cheaper back in the olden days of Italy, when eggs were something that was not generally affordable or attainable. So one thing to know whenever you're making your pasta is ratios do matter. So you want 100 grams of flour to 1 egg. So for every 100 grams, you want 1 egg. So if you're making or using 400 grams of flour, then you want 4 eggs. And typically, 100 grams to the 1 egg ratio is 1 serving. So I'm making, trying to make a big, sheet of pasta. So I'm going to make quite a bit, but typically, whenever you make your noodles and stuff, I'm making a flat noodle for lasagna, but whenever you cut it up into noodles, which, I can either show you in this video or I can make another one, you'll notice that, whenever you cut out the pasta shapes or the flat noodles, 100 grams of flour to 1 egg is equivalent to the serving for 1 person. Now, if you have a food scale, great. I don't happen to have one, but if you do, that would be the best way to accurately measure. But for those of you who do not have a food scale, about half a cup is the equivalent to 100 grams of flour. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up our flour. And what we're going to do is we're going to do 300 grams, or 3 half cups, or a total of 1.5 cups of the doppio zero, or 00 flour. It's really sealed. I'm having a bit of a hard time opening it. There we go. I ripped it. Pour it this way. So right into the cup it goes. So we're going to go ahead and dump that out. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be making a pile. So I need 2 more of these. Shake it out. Ooh, careful. This part can get really messy too. Okay, kind of shake it out. Put that there. One more of my 00. Seal these bags really good. I'm going to open up my semolina. And I'm going to pour out a half cup or 100 grams of the semolina. Now, I want you to take notice on something with the semolina. The whiter, the better, or the more pale in color, the better. The less quality semolina flours tend to be more yellow in color. Your higher qualities are going to be as close to white or pale as possible. This, I would say, is about a medium grade. It's not quite as yellow, but it's not as white as you could find it. Okay. And we're just going to kind of mix this up by hand. Notice that I'm doing this all on my wooden chopping board. There is reason for that. So historically, or just traditionally rather for Italians, they make their pasta on a wooden surface using a wooden rolling pin if they're going to roll it out by hand and not use it by machine. That yields the best texture to the pasta and lends a very sort of rusticness to your dough. If you spill some over to the side, that's fine. I don't believe that my cutting board was quite big enough to do this. Now, if you don't have a wooden cutting board or wooden rolling pin, totally fine. You can do it on your counter surface or any surface that you choose. If you don't have a wooden rolling pin, that's fine too. As you can see, I don't. Mine's just a non-stick. If you don't have a rolling pin at all, you can use a bottle of wine or any weighted cylindrical object to roll out your dough when it comes that time. We're not quite there yet. Okay, so this is well incorporated, and I'm just going to kind of put that back into a pile. Now, what I'm going to do is with these 3 fingers, I'm going to gently swirl it around, and I'm going to make a well in the center of my dough. And I still want good walls, and I'll show you why here in just a moment. Woo. Stuff's just falling off the side, and I guess that's okay. Because what we're going to do is we're going to take these eggs and we're going to crack them right in the center of our well. And this is done the traditional way in Italy. Most Italian grandmas, nonnas, make their pasta. And you notice these eggs are of really, really good quality. So I'm using organic, farm eggs. This isn't the white variety that you would normally get at the grocery store. They are large eggs, and that is important. You do want to use large eggs, but the quality of your egg is really going to lend a good color and a good texture to your pasta. Careful not to get any shells, and be careful not to let it run over the side, and that's what I'm fearing right now if I had this last egg. Didn't happen. Very lucky. So again, my eggs have a little bit more of an orangey reddish color. It's great. It's going to lend a great color to our pasta. So you're going to very gently break your yolks and whisk your eggs there right in the center. And once you get a nice good whisking on your eggs, once you get them well incorporated, is when you're going to start peeling in the sides and adding the flour to your dough. Now it's going to pick up a little bit there that was on the bottoms, and some from the side that it's scraping. You want to make sure that you don't get it spilling over the side. But see here, we got a nice good scramble to them there. Now we can begin to start adding in from the sides here, just little by little, and really incorporating that in. See, as you can see, it's starting to spill over. It's okay if it does, but definitely want to, see what I mean? Definitely want to avoid doing so. Oh, okay. So as you can see, my cutting board wasn't big enough. I'm just going to finish this out on my counter. And it looks really messy and dirty and nasty, and it's not. This is the traditional way that pasta is made. So you just get your hands in there and start mixing and incorporating in all of that flour with your egg, combining your wet ingredients with your dry ingredients. And having a knife or a bench scraper on hand is going to play very helpful, as this dough tends to become very sticky. So as you're incorporating it together, you're gonna see it's gonna stick to your hands, and that's okay. The stickiness will go away, and you can always add more flour as you go along. So as you can see, this is now starting to incorporate. The egg has begun to incorporate with the flour, and all I'm doing is I'm just kind of pinching it together, and I'm about to start my kneading process. Peeling it off my hands as I go. So now we can start pinching it and pushing it together, really making one bigger ball of dough as it starts to form together. Put a little piece of paper in there. And all these little dry bits, we can begin incorporating that into the dough here in just a moment. Take the excess off your hands. You can do that by rolling them together, and the dough will kind of just fall off. And by the way, when you're doing this, make sure your hands are clean. I did wash my hands before I started to begin working on making my pasta. If you need a little bit more flour, because like I said, this dough is sticky, totally fine. You can grab a little bit of that doppio setto, sprinkle it on, and that'll help make it less sticky. So again, we want to kind of start forming it into a ball so we can begin our kneading process. And that's what we're doing here. You're going to want to knead this for about 10 minutes. And the technique to kneading is all going to be in the palm of your hand, or the heel part of the palm on your hand. So you're going to want to gather up your dough like so in a ball. And you're going to want to, with the heel of your hand, roll and push forward and bring it back. Roll, push forward, and bring it back. Roll, push forward, and bring it back. And if you have smaller hands, totally okay that you can use the two-hand method, but the point is that you want to stretch out your dough. And again, don't worry about the little dry bits that fall off. You can pick those up at the end. But you're going to want to knead this for about 10 minutes. Point being is that you want to begin to develop the gluten and the proteins in the flour. That's what's going to give your pasta a good chewy texture. And you'll start to kind of feel this come together. The dough will become harder and harder to knead and stretch out as you develop those proteins and those glutens. It's a great workout. Definitely helps for eating pasta guilt-free as you burn those calories making the homemade pasta. And I can't stress enough, the taste of fresh homemade pasta versus, the store-bought, the dried pasta. I mean, they're okay. And honestly, if that's the one part that you're like, I really don't want to make the homemade pasta, I want to, buy the pre-done lasagna sheets. That's totally fine. You can certainly do that. However, the fresh pasta, which is indigenous to the northern part of Italy, Emilia Romagna, and certainly for this dish, lasagna bolognese al forno, making that fresh pasta is just going to make it all that much more authentic. And it's better for you. All the preservatives and the sugar and things that they can add to the store-bought pasta, you're not getting that here when you make it yourself. You can control the ingredients, you can control the freshness. Definitely makes it better. Okay, so as you can see, the dough is getting a little bit harder to work each time. to start picking up those dried bits that fall off. You're not going to get all of them, but that's okay. And however you want to knead, whatever makes it easiest for you, you got a technique down, by all means you can definitely make that your way. Okay. So I got the dough at a nice good consistency. I'm going to kind of form that up into a ball, like so. And I'm going to cover it with a little bit of olive oil once I can get some of this excess dough here off my hands. Incorporate that back in. It's a lot of dough, very sticky. So I'm gonna take a little bit of olive oil, and it's not gonna take much. It's only gonna be that might actually be too much. You just want to lightly, coat the surface because you don't want your pasta to dry out and form a skin. So coat it up all over. Nice, good hard dough. A lot of good proteins worked up in there. Okay, and then we're going to cover it with some plastic wrap and let it rest for about 15-20 minutes. And then once it rests, the glutens and the proteins will be nice and relaxed, and then that's when we can begin to roll it out and make our pasta. See you in a bit.